Okay, so let me explain. Can you really make wine using a potato masher? There is a lot out there in the world of winemaking equipment. Crusher destemmers and presses being two most costly things you will need. But what about the time between crushing and pressing? Aside from the building, those can be just as costly since the greater the volume, the more tank space you need. I've seen horizontal fermenters that rotate like a cement mixer, air pulse mechanisms that churn the cap from shooting jets of air through the tank. Pump overs are one of the most common, and those can either be automated or require a cellar worker to hook into each tank and pump over. Honestly, I am glad my days of standing on a ladder with a winery hose full of must in one hand and the pump controller with the other for 10 minutes at a time just to make someone else's wine a little less expensive to make. However, we were talking about potato mashers, weren't we? So for boutique winemaking, we are talking about punch downs, and there are just as many tools for accomplishing this. Punch downs, if you don't know, are when we physically push the skins and seeds that are being pushed up by CO2 during fermentation back into the liquid to keep the extraction happening, as well as not dry out and develop off flavors. They can be down on a small tank, which is a bit scary when you realize that if you fall, you might not be able to reach the edge of the tank, and the must could be a way down to prevent overflows. The empty tank space would also be full of CO2, and you would quickly suffocate before your head goes below the surface. I'd say most commonly, though, would be punch downs done on macro bins or 48-inch S bins. The 48-inch S bin being the larger, holding 2 to 3 times the amount of must compared to a regular macro bin with the same footprint. This larger bin seems to make good sense when considering floor space and the number of punch downs you'd have to do until you attempt a punch down on a full bin. In just the time it takes to get one started, getting your punch down tool through the skins, you could have completed a punch down on the smaller macro bin, and a much more thorough one at that. Oh, but back to the potato masher. Speaking of punch down tools, I've seen a huge variety of these, mostly stainless steel, maybe a long steel rod with extra handles, and even foot pegs so you can punch through that cap on that larger bin. Once you get through that cap, where does that foot peg end up? In the fermentation? I'll pass on that. Some are really just designed to make short work and have a big surface area, making it harder to push into the must. Also, you have to be aware that these stainless steel tools can easily scar up your macro bin, giving rogue yeasts and bacterial a place to hide, no matter how well you think you can clean these. I've also seen some tools that are simply more of a spear, just so you can get the punch down started by breaking through the surface, then moving on to the punch down. There are even pneumatic punch down tools that you can wheel from bin to bin, usually for those S bins, hopefully doing punch downs over a series of bins that are all fermenting with the same yeast strain. What about the potato mashers? What are you going to do with this? These are perfect for the home winemaker, sure. And at first I was using one that was a bit small, had a wooden handle, but found it was relatively cheap to find ones that were all stainless steel, had a bigger footprint, cleaned easily, and were lightweight, allowing a much more vigorous punch down. Now, we already touched upon the aeration during punch downs with the other shapes of tools, but what about that caused by just working it and churning the cap, pushing it into solution, stirring it in, delivering air to the yeast, dissipating heat? This can remedy a lot of issues in the fermentation stage of winemaking when things are in full swing. The must getting almost too warm, reductive smells beginning, and yeast that is starved for oxygen. It just takes a bit of hard work, not an additive, not throwing money at it, not just figuring that we'll just fix the faulty wine later, dealing with it now, fixing the issue and not the symptom. The funny thing is, working and making wine in an alternating proprietor facility, everyone sees what the other is doing. We all share tips and tricks and poke fun of others' neuroses in jest. We also get to taste the results of what others do. However, my brother and I have often found that while we were initially prodded over how many punch downs we did in a day and the use of the masher, we often had much better results. We also quickly noticed, regardless of how good our results were, Nobody wanted to put in the sweat equity. Heck, we've even seen others go through all the work to actually step in their must and punch down by foot. That typically lasts one season. I mean, really, how often do you want to sanitize your feet and legs in a cold winery and they stomp grapes that are still only 50 degrees? Anyway, yes, the potato masher in a picking bin for punch downs. Lightweight, food grade, accomplishing 3 tasks at once, safe on my macro bins, easy to clean and sanitize, and for virtually no trade-off except for working a little more vigorously. Oh, and a lot less expensive than most punch-down tools. It is not glamorous. It does not fit the narrative for a winery, and it does limit the amount of wine you can make by hand. Anyway, thanks for tuning in, and don't forget to subscribe as we tackle a lot of other practices a boutique winery does differently.